What's up, it's cinemashogun here, and I'm sure a lot of you all remember this, but for a few weeks there, I was covering this story about these three Kansas City Chiefs fans who were all hanging out at their friend's house, and then they went missing only to be found frozen to death in their friend's backyard like 2 or 3 days later. Well, we talked a lot about this story. And right when I feel like this story was at its height, right when family members were starting to speak out, neighbors were coming out with videos and stories, cousins were saying, oh, Jordan is the chemist and all. Right when it seemed as if we were starting to finally get a lot of information about this case, out of nowhere, it's like the story completely disappeared. And listen, I've covered plenty of true crime cases. I've complained about this in the past, how one day you could have the biggest story in the world and then the next day no one cares anymore. And these families are often left behind kind of in shell shock. Because one day the whole world is focused on their loved one who is found dead or killed or missing. And then the next day no one cares about them anymore, right? So I know this stuff kind of happens, but I've never seen a story fall off this dramatically to the point where we haven't heard anything at all. And we're dealing with the case. In some cases, it's like the families involved don't want to deal with the media. They don't want to talk, right? But in this case, the families have been fighting to get this story heard. They've been fighting to get on the news, fighting to get this information out there. And as soon as they started to get this information out there, as soon as they started getting on certain news outlets talking about this case, it's like someone flipped the switch. Now, usually I probably wouldn't even say anything about this. I would just let things be how they are. But this is a unique case. Because right from the beginning, it seemed as if law enforcement, for some odd reason, didn't want to thoroughly investigate this case. We know that the investigation was botched. They left behind tons of evidence. You have to go refer back to previous videos to see how all of this played out. But law enforcement totally dropped the ball. Within 24 hours, they basically came out and said there's no foul play, no story to be seen here, and tried to write off the situation in its entirety within 24 hours, before an autopsy, a toxicology report, before anything. And still, at the time of this recording, we don't have an autopsy report or a toxicology report in front of us. I know an early toxicology report came out, but that is all. And as I said, usually I would let this blow by. I wouldn't really say anything about it, but there's something weird about this case to me. And of course, you have the number one suspect who hasn't been named a suspect, but you have Jordan Willis, who is at the center of all of this. You see, the three men who were found frozen to death in his backyard. And it just so happens that this dude is a well-known, well-respected medical scientist that works on vaccines, and he was studying, trying to figure out the cure for HIV. He did some work on the beer bug vaccine. Can't really say those words on YouTube, but he's been working on all of that stuff. So everyone thought it was weird to begin with that we have this dude who people say he's the chemist. They say that he whips up homemade stuff and gives it to people to make them feel good, right? So we already got reports that this dude is out here basically whipping up substances to give to his friends and what have you. But also we know this is a guy who's he's got like awards from the government, you name it. Like, this is a well-known dude in his little space. An important guy, I guess you could say, because he's literally someone who's working on the cure for HIV and someone who worked on the beer bug jab and all of this stuff. So a lot of people have questions as to what actually happened to these men. They have questions if Jordan provided it or Jordan maybe made a mixture of things. And there's questions in my mind wondering if law enforcement kind of tried to turn a blind eye to this case because of who Jordan is. We know that when police originally arrived, they found the men frozen to death in the backyard. They handcuffed Jordan, but then they let him go. And I still have this question on my mind, because it really feels like they wanted this story to go away, and now the story went away, and I'm wondering if it has anything to do with Jordan and his occupation. Now, to be fair, there's also a huge possibility that Jordan caught a huge break. Because you see, all of this happened right, like all of this stuff was coming out right before the Super Bowl, okay? The Chiefs were in the Super Bowl. So now, the news cycle in Kansas City, they're not worried about the Chiefs fans who were found dead. Now the news cycle and the media, they're all hyped up about the Super Bowl. And then, of course, a couple of days after the Super Bowl, we had that situation that unfolded at the Super Bowl parade, right? So now the media is focused on the shooting at the parade. They're focused on the Chiefs getting the big W in the Super Bowl. And the media totally forgot about, moved on, or maybe they've been kind of told to move on from the case about these three men who were found dead. So we really don't have any answers as to who or where they got this stuff from. We still don't know why Jordan didn't know that they were frozen to death in his backyard for days on end. I still don't believe Jordan's version of events, but it looks as if the story has just totally disappeared. We went from the families being on the news talking about this case every night to you haven't heard anything about them at all. Now, I know behind the scenes there was some infighting between the families. Some families say that, yeah, we need to be out here raising awareness. Other families want to sit back and wait for the investigation to play out. But I don't think sitting back and waiting has helped this case. At this point, I don't expect to get any answers. I don't expect Jordan to be held accountable for whatever role he played in this. I do think there's a possibility that one of the reasons, maybe not the main reason why, there's a lot of factors at play, but I do think that Jordan's occupation and whatever connections Jordan may have, I do think that is definitely playing a factor into how this case was covered and handled to begin with, and how it's being handled and covered now. And now it's basically not being handled or covered at all. It's as if it never happened. And I feel like Jordan's occupation maybe motivated some media outlets to not touch on this story too much. Because even when the news was talking about this, a lot of the big news outlets that would usually report on a case like this, it's almost as if they were staying away from the case the whole time. So definitely an odd situation. I'm going to keep my eye on things. If you've seen anything new about this case, feel free to let me know, because I haven't really seen much. But for now, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. While you're down there, if you're feeling generous, you can donate to the channel via CashApp, or you can help the channel for free by liking, subscribing, all of that good stuff. But with that being said, I'll talk to you all soon in the next one.